Wow, I was not expecting to enjoy this game as much as I did. Spider-Man Miles Morales honestly threw me for a loop. Not that I was expecting it to be bad or anything, but I didn't exactly have the highest expectations for this game either. I had never gotten around to finishing the first Spider-Man game on PlayStation 4. I remember that game was fine as well, but at the time I was too distracted by other games like God of War and Persona 5. But seeing how great this game is after giving it the proper attention, I'm definitely going to finish that one pretty soon. As for Miles Morales, the game starts off strong as hell. As soon as the first mission started, I was engaged with the story and the world. The game is so visually dynamic that at times I feel like I was watching a Spider-Man movie rather than playing a game. And mind you, I'm playing this on a PlayStation 4, because finding a PlayStation 5 is harder than 7-year-old stale bread. But the game runs impressively well on the PlayStation 4, so I can only imagine how smooth it is on the PlayStation 5. I know this game is still relatively new, so if you don't want any plot elements to be spoiled, feel free to skip to this time at the bottom of the screen. All good? Kicking off the story, we have Peter Parker and Miles Morales doing some hero work assisting the police in transporting prison inmates. Shit gets bad very quickly after Rhino escapes the convoy and starts fucking up the city. With both Peter and Miles struggling to stop the Rhino, Peter ends up getting knocked out, causing Miles to awaken his electric powers, giving him the edge in battle. Rhino is defeated and the day is saved with our two Spider-Men. Following those events, a suspiciously enthusiastic man named Simon Krieger, who is the head of a new energy corporation named Roxxon, shows up to take Rhino into captivity. Without asking too many questions, our heroes allow this to happen, and Peter has some news for Miles. It turns out that Peter will be leaving on a business trip with Mary Jane, leaving Miles to protect New York City by himself. Unsure if he's ready for the task or not, Miles steps up to the plate to fulfill his role as Spider-Man, quickly realizing how tough the task truly is. On his journey, Miles faces off against a terrorist group known as the Underground. Their group is led under the guidance of the Tinkerer, whose goal is to steal Roxxon's new form energy and use it to destroy the Roxxon Corporation. Seeing how potentially detrimental that plan could be, Miles faces off against the Tinkerer, to which he finds out that their true identity is none other than his childhood best friend Finn. Wanting to make her reconsider her decision, Miles gives chase on Finn, even revealing his secret identity to her, but all that does is prevent her from killing him. Unfortunately, both the Tinkerer and Spider-Man get kidnapped, forcing them to work together, and we then learn the dark secrets about Roxxon and their foul practices. Turns out, Finn's brother Rick originally developed Nuform alongside Simon Krieger, but the energy made him sick, so when he tried to shut down Nuform, Krieger had Rick killed, with Finn being a witness to her brother's death. While Miles agrees that something must be done about the Roxxon Corporation, both him and Finn disagree about how to go about it, so Miles has to put his personal feelings aside and do whatever it takes to save the city. Finn is successful in activating the reactor that will destroy Roxxon, but the specifications have been amplified to destroy Harlem. Miles and Finn have one last battle, with Miles prevailing, and finally, after seeing the destruction of the city and all the chaos around Finn, she realizes that what she is doing is wrong. Before things get to a point of no return, Miles absorbs the energy of the reactor into his own body, preventing it from exploding, but the energy is too much for him to handle alone. In a final act of repentance, Finn carries Miles up a building and skyrockets them both into the air to allow Miles to release all of that new form energy into the atmosphere. Unfortunately, this kills Finn in the process, but at last the day is saved. Simon Krieger gets arrested and Peter Parker returns to join Miles in protecting the city. Personally, I loved the story. At its core, the story is about Miles finding out what it means to become Spider-Man, and this type of story is perfect for a superhero game. We start off with a Miles who is trying his hardest to be as perfect as possible, but only ends up fucking shit up. So people around him only see him as a liability and someone that needs to be protected, as we later see with his uncle, and the people around the city barely acknowledge him in comparison to Peter Parker. But as Miles goes through hardships and seeing the people that he loves turn into the people that he despises, he grows up and understands that no matter what, he will and has to do the right thing to keep the city safe, because that's his job as Spider-Man. I love that, it's beautiful. We see Miles turn his back onto his uncle, someone who Miles deeply loves and admires, but when he is faced with a decision, Miles is ready to give his life if that means protecting the city and its people. And through his growth in decision making, that shows in his actions, and the city begins to acknowledge him as a hero alongside Peter instead of just a subordinate. And it's a pretty good story, all things considered, but the story wasn't the only aspect of the game that I enjoyed. Moving on to the gameplay, Spider-Man Miles Morales is like the definition of fun. Starting off with the combat, Spider-Man is just as acrobatic as you'd expect him to be. He can perform combinations of attacks with the square button, he can perform a web strike attack using the triangle button, he can dodge attacks with the circle button, and use his web shooters and other gadgets with the R1 button. Exclusive to Miles are bioelectrical attacks that he can perform by holding down L1 in combination with the square and circle button. And he can also perform a cool finisher once his combo meter reaches 10 hits, instantly killing an enemy. All of these make for a very fast paced and frantic beat 'em up style of gameplay, very similar to the Batman Arkham games, but with so much more pizzazz. Combining these moves together can allow you to very easily pull off some slick shit that only a character like Spider-Man could do, and I think that's the highlight of the combat. Defeating enemies as flashy as possible, similar to how Spider-Man would in a movie, is so satisfying to accomplish, which is great because this game has a lot of combat. Like, that's pretty much half of the game. The other half of the game consists of free roaming, which is quite honestly my favorite part of the game. Swinging around New York City as Spider-Man is so fucking enjoyable. Miles adds so much personality when web swinging. Like, quite often when Miles is swinging, his body language shows that he isn't 100% comfortable with what he's doing, but he still is having a damn good time with all the dazzling shit that he can pull off in midair. And it's that little attention to detail that makes traveling through the open world and completing missions so much fun to me. It wasn't even until I finished the game that I found out that fast travel was available, but I never saw a use for it, as whenever I was on my way to complete a task, I would just have a blast seeing how fast I could reach a destination by web swinging. Being an open world game, there is plenty of shit for you to do as Spider-Man. Aside from the main quest, there are crimes for Spider-Man to foil, people who need to be saved, and a variety of different collectibles around New York. None of them are required for completing the game, but doing so will reward you with different tokens and experience points, data which can be used to upgrade Spider-Man and unlock new suits. Man, I love that. Having the ability to pick what suit I can control the city in is like really cool. It really brings out the beautiful aesthetic that this game has. I'm honestly shocked at how amazing this game runs on PlayStation 4. Never during my playtime did I experience any frame drops, textures taking too long to load, or any major performance issues. The game is a smooth, beautiful trip all the way through, and the music is great too. Kudos to the composers of the game for bringing out that exaggerated swagger of a black teen. I'm sorry, I had to make that joke. But seriously, the music does a wonderful job of expressing the depth of Miles' conflict of becoming Spider-Man. My personal favorite is I'm Ready by Jaden Smith. This song just fits well with Miles' character growth within the story. Overall, I thought Spider-Man Miles Morales was a great game. Although I don't think it's worth buying a PlayStation 5 just to play, and it may not be as long as other open world games, it was still a fun time to play, and that's what's most important. I will honestly encourage any Spider-Man fans to go right ahead and play this one if you haven't already, and to anyone that enjoys a good superhero game. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new, and as always, stay tuned for the next video.